Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack complex topics, really get you straight to the core. Today, we're tackling a heavy one, Adolf Hitler's goals. And what our sources show, it's not just a simple list of political aims or economic plans. It's this terrifyingly interconnected web. Every single goal, whether it's about racial purity or the economy, it all seems to spiral towards one genocidal endpoint.
That's exactly right. And this deep dive, it isn't just about what he did, it's about the why. Understanding that truly destructive vision he had, a vision that aimed to fundamentally reshape Germany, Europe, and really the entire global order. It's about getting to grips with how this seemingly abstract worldview translated into such concrete horror.
Okay, so when we talk about these destructive goals, it's clearly way beyond just wanting political power, isn't it? What's the real foundation? What's the fundamental why that our sources point to?
Well, the absolute bedrock was this core worldview. It's centered on race, the nation, and this idea of constant struggle, survival, and dominance. His ideology wasn't just simple prejudice. It was presented as an intellectualized racial doctrine. He twisted concepts like social Darwinism, pseudoscientific Nordicist theories, things like that, to claim this Aryan master race idea. And he posited that human history itself was just one long, unending racial struggle.
Right, so if history is just a racial struggle, survival of the fittest, then the so-called superior race, in his mind, isn't just allowed to dominate. It's almost compelled to, like by natural law, to subdue or even, exterminate others deemed inferior. How did that specific thinking just remove all ethical barriers, allow for these unbelievable atrocities?
It reframed atrocities as a natural necessity, part of existence even, by defining certain groups, primarily Jewish people, but also Roma, people with disabilities, Poles, Soviet POWs, Black people, others too, as existential threats to this Aryan race. The regime could dehumanize them completely. And of course, political opponents, Jehovah's Witnesses, homosexuals, they were also targeted as enemies of the state.
Okay, so with that twisted racial view as the base, the next horrifying step seems to be this quest for Lebensraum, living space. Now, that idea wasn't totally new in German politics, right? But Hitler really latched onto it, made it a key reason for World War II.
Oh, absolutely. Lebensraum became a core Nazi principle. It was the justification for expanding Germany eastwards into Central and Eastern Europe. The general plan, also the master plan for the East, it explicitly laid out that Germany needed this space to survive. And survival meant, the permanent removal of most Slavic populations. Deportation, extermination, enslavement. It was genocidal right from the start.
Yeah, the sources are just chillingly clear on that. Mass murder and this demographic engineering. They weren't just side effects of the war. They were the actual goals, creating a racially pure territory. Yeah. And his earlier moves, like remilitarizing the Rhineland, annexing Austria, taking the Sudetenland, these were calculated steps, weren't they? Each time the world didn't challenge him, it just emboldened him more, showed him he could push further.
Exactly. And, his economic goals were completely secondary to these military and land-grabbing ambitions, massive rearmament. That was the real priority. He even admitted quite openly that by 1942, Germany would need to create living space in the East, and that this required short, decisive blows. War, basically.
It's really telling how that push for autarky, economic self-sufficiency ultimately didn't work out, isn't it? Germany was still importing, 15% of its food right before the war started in 1939? So what did that failure lead to?
It just reinforced his conviction that Germany's problem could be solved only by the use of force. Specifically, force in Eastern Europe. The economic problem was deliberately framed so that only a military solution leading to the brutal exploitation of conquered lands and peoples could possibly solve it. I mean, the plans for Eastern Europe, they were literally designed to cause mass starvation, societal collapse among those deemed inferior, just to clear the land for Germans.
And then internally, his goal was forging this unified, racially pure Volksgemeinschaft, a people's community. That meant huge social engineering, total control. You think of the Nuremberg laws, stripping Jews of citizenship, the constant propaganda, the whole cult of personality around Hitler himself. How vital was that internal reshaping for his external plans?
Oh, critically important, absolutely crucial. This internal purification, cultivating absolute loyalty, it was a prerequisite for the aggressive foreign policy and the genocide. By dehumanizing and persecuting undesirables at home, the regime sort of conditioned the population, made them accept violence on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
And it created a unified front, minimizing internal dissent.
Which leads us straight to the New Order, doesn't it? His grand vision for Europe and eventually world leadership. And again, this wasn't just about borders on a map. It was a massive continent-wide project of racial engineering.
Exactly. At its heart was a rigid racial hierarchy, the Aryan master race at the very top. Other groups, Jews, Roma, most Slavs labeled inferior, marked for extermination, expulsion, or enslavement. The invasion of the Soviet Union, Operation Barbarossa, it wasn't just about destroying communism, it was about racially reorganizing European Russia, leading directly to the enslavement and extermination of Baltic peoples, Slavic peoples. And this thousand-year Reich, it implied a greater German Reich stretching across Europe, parts of Africa. There were even vague plans involving the Americas eventually.
So, tying it all together,
Yeah.
what's the main takeaway about Hitler's goals? It seems clear his virulent racial ideology, especially the anti-Semitism and the Aryan supremacy thing, that was the absolute foundation for everything else.
Precisely. And internal control, the Volksgemeinschaft, that was essential preparation for the aggression and mass murder to come. While the failure of economic self-sufficiency, the autarky, that just directly fed the need for military conquest and brutal exploitation.
And the new order was the blueprint, a plan for a continent-wide, ultimately global, racial restructuring.
Right. And it leaves us with this final thought, maybe something provocative for you to consider. That thousand-year Reich, it wasn't pictured as some static, finished empire. It was envisioned as a dynamic state, constant racial struggle, perpetual expansion. So what does it actually mean when your long-term vision of peace or order has perpetual violence and growth baked into its very core? It suggests that even victory, had it happened, would have just been a pause, a temporary halt before the next phase of conflict inevitably began.